for joining me here this afternoon. We are here live now with a potential tropical cyclone Debby update. We've got a major update from the National Hurricane Center. We're seeing a bit more agreement in the models now. And overall, we just have a greater idea of what we think is going to happen with potential tropical storm Debby, maybe even Hurricane Debby. We're going to dive into all the different potential scenarios in this stream. Today we are joined by Mr. Storm.
What's up, guys?
Go check out his channel. It'll be in the description below. So, anyway, right now, we do have potential tropical cyclone Debby, according to the National Hurricane Center. And by 7 p.m., we are expecting to have ourselves Tropical Depression 4, alright? So, this would be, again, pretty substantial because we have not had a tropical system in a while now, right? It's been about a month. But this is going to continue to head westward here. Right now, it's kind of located here in Cuba. But eventually, by the time it makes it to the Florida Keys, the National Hurricane Center says that this will likely be Tropical Storm Debby with sustained winds of about 40 miles per hour and maximum gusts up to 50. It's going to continue to kind of ride along the Florida west coast here, and we can see that by the time that it makes landfall near Tampa, we could see some sort of landfall here, but it would be a brief one where it would go back kind of into the Atlantic for a little bit. But this little brief landfall here, we could be talking about Tropical Storm Debby with sustained winds of 50 miles per hour and maximum gusts up to 65. And then its actual landfall in Florida here near, right now, where we're predicting to be the Cedar Key, Ingles area. And remember, this will all change. This is just the general area that we're thinking right now we could see a landfall in. It will be a high-end tropical storm with sustained winds of 65 miles an hour and gusts up to 75. I'd like to point out that's about a county inland, so it actually could be a little bit stronger than what this says. So this will continue to ride through Florida, making it all the way to Jacksonville, still being a tropical storm with sustained winds of 45 miles an hour and gusts up to 60. And it'll continue to re-enter the Atlantic here back, and eventually it will approach the Carolinas. Now, right now, the National Hurricane Center isn't saying anything yet about a Carolinas landfall. We're a bit too far out, but it's looking like we could see a landfall in North Carolina as either a high-end tropical storm Debby or maybe even a low-end Category 1 Hurricane Debby. So today, again, we're going to be breaking down all the scenarios, answering all those questions. If anybody has any questions about their location, leave those down below. That's the entire point of this stream here. But we do have tropical storm watches and warnings now in effect. Now, these tropical storm warnings here on the southwest coast of Florida, the only reason that they're here in effect is because, one, we're seeing outer bands getting close to that area, and obviously this will be the first area that gets affected. We're not expecting to see a landfall in southwestern Florida, but we could see some tropical storm-like impacts. However, we're actually not going to see any likely substantial winds in this area. Probably even the storm surge isn't going to be anything too crazy. The biggest problem in southwest Florida would be the rainfall. We are expecting 3 to 6 inches of rainfall from this system, which could cause some pretty significant flash flooding. So, again, that's for areas from the most southern tip of Florida there, back up towards Cape Coral, where we have tropical storm warnings in effect. The situation right now is pretty unfavorable for tornadoes. Now, we can go ahead and talk about some other areas that are going to have the potential to see this. Let's talk about some areas where we could see landfall and what we're expecting the landfall impacts to be here. So, if we go and turn off the cone here, we can see that they don't actually have tropical storm watches going up that far yet because we are a bit too far out. But let's go ahead and take a look at the area here on the west coast of Florida, the furthest out that we can look right now, right? So, again, we may see some sort of clip landfall here in west central Florida anyway, but we are expecting the peak wind forecast for this area to be, again, pretty insignificant overall since we're not actually going to see a landfall here. The storm surge could be about 1 to 3 feet, it looks like right now, so we could see some sort of areas right along the coast experience some significant inundation, but nothing else too significant. The rain will be a huge problem. 6 to 10 inches of rain with locally higher amounts is enough to obviously cause significant flash flooding. But, yeah, that's what we're expecting kind of for west central Florida, the Tampa area. Mr. Storm, I'm going to go ahead and let my voice have a rest here. I'm going to check the stream chat. Do you have anything to say?
Yeah, still, big impacts are expected on the west coast of Florida. Obviously, we already did get tropical storm warnings for some areas, south of Cape Coral there. But if you're in Tampa, you're under a tropical storm watch, and, some of these watching warnings do go fairly far inland, so impacts can be seen even into central Florida, potentially, from this storm, and this could definitely make landfall as a 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm, which is a higher-end tropical storm. And then, obviously, like Dave said, this is going to go through Florida, North Florida, and then by Monday morning, we're expecting this to be at around a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm before this gets back over waters. Now, as you know, we have some incredibly warm and just hot sea surface temperatures out there, and so because this is going to be back over waters, we're actually expecting this to take the jump from all the way from 45 to a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm as this is just off the coast of the Carolinas. Now, that's a really big jump, and you don't usually see that. You see that pretty rarely from the National Hurricane Center, but that's what they have as of right now, just because of how warm these waters actually are. And so, obviously, this is subject to change, and I do think that we could see a few tweaks in the, cone here. So this could definitely, move further inland and, further west. That would be a worst case, one of the, worst case scenarios for the Carolinas. I guess not the worst case scenario, but definitely something that we want to avoid with this storm actually making a direct landfall or a secondary landfall in the Carolinas. But as of right now, we have a really big jump, and that's the last point in which the National Hurricane Center has a forecast for. So I think by tomorrow we'll see if this is actually going to become a hurricane, as far as what the National Hurricane Center says. But as of right now, they're saying that once this gets, offshore from from North Carolina, then this will be strengthened. This will be a strengthening tropical storm, and once again, by tomorrow, we'll see if this will actually become a strengthening hurricane. But yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, so I just want to quickly touch on what you said about the sea surface temperatures. I know we're not quite at peak hurricane season yet, but we're getting very close, and the sea surface temperatures are above average enough to the point where this is basically, what we see during peak hurricane season in terms of the SSTs, right? Right now, the track that we have Debby going for, it's going to be going through spots with 85-degree SSTs or even slightly higher at times, which is enough to potentially cause some rapid intensification. Now, we do have a little bit of wind shear out here, a very minimal amount, but it is there nonetheless, so that could potentially slow some intensification down here with, again, potential tropical cyclone Debby, likely tropical cyclone Debby now, but right now, again, we are expecting this to, again, we'll say it one more time, make a landfall potentially somewhere here in the Florida Keys first, but after that, it'll kind of clip west central Florida, but eventually, right now, we're expecting a landfall in the Big Bend of Florida. It'll continue to head through northern portions of Florida, leaves the Florida area around Jacksonville, enters the Atlantic once more, and potentially makes another landfall on the Carolinas. So, let's go ahead and talk about some of the specific intricacies here, right? So, let's go ahead and start off by talking about the National Hurricane Center's storm surge map here, the little forecast that they have. So keep in mind, we are going to get a new National Hurricane Center update before this stream ends, I imagine. It's going to be in about 45 minutes that we do get a new one, so this will be updated soon. But right now, we are expecting anywhere from 1 to 3 feet of storm surge to be possible, going all the way from Arapaika back down towards the southern tip of Florida here, which, again, is enough to cause some serious inundation, but only usually right along the immediate coastline. So it shouldn't be too huge of a problem as of right now. It's not looking like, but something that could be a pretty significant problem is, once again, the heavy rain. All right, if we go ahead and bring up this heavy rainfall map that the National Hurricane Center has put out on your screen here, we can see that we are expecting some spots that get a direct landfall from this right along the coastline of Florida. They're just an itty-bitty sliver of Florida to get anywhere from 8 to 12 inches of rain, which would be extremely significant. And again, combine that with the storm surge threat areas that are right along the coast. I mean, we're going to see some very, very serious flooding issues, inundation issues. We could even see, see a slight uptick in the forecast. It's definitely a possibility, but by the time this approaches the Carolinas again, we're going to see this continue to produce spots of rainfall of 8 to 12 inches, and if this does make it, again, a landfall in North Carolina, we could see some impacts like that right along the Outer Banks area, the east coast of North Carolina, so that's something very serious to look out for, obviously. If we go ahead and take a look at the flash flooding potential, this is what the National Hurricane Center has said. So these are the areas with the greatest risk of flash flooding over the next 5 days, right? So we're talking about areas like pretty much all of Florida, all right, except for maybe the extreme southern tip and southeast Florida around the Lake Okeechobee area. You guys have a slight risk. That goes back into southeast Georgia, central and eastern South Carolina, all the way back up into North Carolina. Now, keep in mind, this is only over the next 5 days. The reason you guys are in the marginal up there in the east coast of North Carolina is because this won't have hit you yet. It could take a week or longer for this to get to the east coast of North Carolina there. Let me go and catch my breath for a second. These streams are always a lot of talking and a lot of me catching my breath, but Mr. Storm, if you have anything to say, just, say it now. Mr. Storm, hello? Oh, he's muted. You're in the worst risk for flooding? Yeah, I mean, again, though, we are still a little fuzzy on all the details, but yeah, west central Florida is definitely going to be one of the areas that sees significant flash flooding, damaging winds, and potentially even some storm surge to look out for. Catching my breath. Give me just a second here. So, these are the tropical storm force wind speed probabilities. So, let's go ahead and pull these up on your screen here very quickly. Again, this is all according to the National Hurricane Center here. Let's see here. So, we are expecting some spots along the immediate coastline of western Florida here to potentially, again, have that 30 to 40% chance of tropical storm force winds. So we'll watch out for that. There's another spot that just clips the southeast Georgia coastline there, just barely of that. So again, worst case scenario here or not worst case scenario, but the area with the worst impacts in terms of the damaging winds, again, will likely be in west central Florida, at least for the Florida landfall. Again, the reason North Carolina is not seeing any of those bright colors is because it's too far out, all right? We're talking only within 5 days here. So, again, along the coastline there, along the immediate coastline of western Florida, there are some spots that have a 30 to 40% chance to see tropical storm force winds. For a good chunk of kind of the Big Bend of Florida here, even going pretty far inland, all the way out towards the Tallahassee area, you have a 20 to 30% chance to see tropical storm force winds. So, again, we'll likely see these numbers increase as confidence increases whenever we know for a fact that this system's going to enter this area. But right now, since we're still a few days out, it's kind of hard to forecast. But again, we're starting to get a little bit more certain on some of the details here. So, Mr. Storm, did I hear that you're back?
Yeah, I'm really sorry for that. My brother came in screaming and crying because my sister was chasing him, so,
Dang,
yeah.
Okay. Sibling abuse.
So I apologize for kind of leaving you hanging and interrupting, but, yeah, I'm back.
What's up, Sam? Random texting guy, the chance that this goes to Houston is 0%. If this goes to Houston, that would be the turn of the century, honestly.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about this.
Again, like 24 hours ago, I wouldn't have been able to say that, I would have said probably a 10% chance that this heads for Houston, but at this point, the chance that this goes to Houston is plummeting rapidly.
1%, I would say.
I don't even know about that. Less than 1% for me.
Doesn't even matter at this point.
Yeah, it's just a low chance, we can agree on that. So, give me just a second here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the GFS's track for this. So let's go and bring up the GFS here. So, let's do the composite reflectivity. So this is what PTC Debby is looking like right now. Actually, if we want to get a little bit more specific, we could look at satellite. Let's see here. Do they have they don't. Well, okay, I guess it's right here. So this is what a potential tropical cyclone Debby looks like right now, all right? Not super impressive, but it is starting to become an organized cluster of thunderstorms, and again, that's probably going to continue to be the case over the next few hours. It's probably going to get more and more impressive. But this system will continue to head northwestward. Again, right now, it's kind of in the Cuba area here. But again, if we go ahead and take a look at the satellite loop here, we can see that just, last night, it was way less impressive than this. Now it's starting to get, kind of that tropical cyclone shape. Again, just last night it looked like this, all right? Nothing too crazy, but now we've got ourselves a fully blown, tropical cyclone looking system here, so that's definitely something to look out for. Again, right now in Cuba, really all this is doing is producing some thunderstorm activity with some gusty winds, but that's what's going on with it right now. So if we go ahead and take a look at the GFS's track here, we can see that it has this, again, doing a very similar to what the National Hurricane Center cone is actually saying. Usually the GFS isn't great in situations like this, but it's not looking too bad this time around. So by tomorrow at 1 p.m., we could be dealing with a tropical storm system, maybe here right on the southern tip of Florida. It's a possibility there. We will have a live stream, not forecasting keep talking about Beryl. Not forecasting Debby tomorrow. Tomorrow will probably be the day that we start actually covering Debby. Sorry, I know my face is kind of off the camera here. But Debby, again, will be probably a tropical storm in South Florida tomorrow, all right? We go into, this would be Sunday here, we can see that it's going to be a little bit less organized at this point, but again, some sort of tropical storm-like impacts on central Florida there, and then eventually it'll re-enter the Atlantic here, and again, the GFS is almost saying that, hey, this could become a full-blown hurricane at its North Carolina landfall. I mean, look at this. This is an impressive system we're dealing with. This is on the 5th, which would be Monday, I believe. And Monday, Tuesday, all right, that's where we're going to have what the GFS says will be a tropical storm, maybe even a hurricane, maybe even a strong hurricane, sitting right here along the east coast of North Carolina. Now, that would be awful. Luckily, I don't think that's going to happen. But if that does happen, we will see extremely torrential rainfall over a large spot. Now, this will continue to head northeastward. Probably not going to make any sort of impacts on the United States, not significant ones anyway, after it leaves the North Carolina area. Maybe it just barely clips Cape Cod here for a little bit, but Nova Scotia will be the one that has to worry about this after that. Mr. Storm, you got anything to say just while I catch my breath once again?
Yeah, so, like you mentioned, the GFS and a few other models have really shown some possible strengthening with the storm after it makes its way off the coast of Florida. And I mean, like we've mentioned, these SSTs are incredibly warm and incredibly high, so, anything can happen. We can definitely have some rapid intensification, and so I really do think that there is still a real chance for the storm to rebound and become a hurricane because, like I said earlier, the National Hurricane Center, as of right now, bumping this back up to a 60-mile-an-hour tropical storm, and that's the last forecast point that they have. So once we get a little bit later in the week, we'll actually see if they will actually, bring out that bring out that hurricane forecast. If meaning that they're gonna show us that they're expecting a hurricane, which very possible that it's not gonna happen, and that'd be obviously the better scenario. But I really do think that folks in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, even up towards maybe even Virginia, need to just be on standby for some potential rapid intensification. And this is very far out, all right? So we're not going to say anything official. But for the New England states, just eye the storm. You don't need to be concerned at all. You don't need to be even watching this if you don't want to. But I think that there is a chance that for some reason, if our trough that what seems to be what we're going to get is a trough that's going to pull this out to sea, if that trough's timing gets mixed up, this may actually be an impact to land. And so I don't want to say anything too early, but I'm just saying if you're in New England, just eye the storm, don't be worried at all. But we really need to pay attention to Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas for obviously that hurricane threat, but also just the actual threats that we know are going to impact land.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, speaking of New England, I did just want to quickly point out, we do have a severe thunderstorm watch in effect going out for portions of central and southern New Jersey back into the Delmarva Peninsula, so I guess not really the New England area, but watch out for that. The main threats with this are going to be damaging winds up to 65 miles an hour possible in isolated occurrences. So next, we can go ahead and talk about the rainfall that the GFS is predicting for this system. So the GFS has actually been pretty conservative on its newest run with the rainfall. It's saying that maybe some spots hugging the immediate coast here in west central Florida get, half a foot of rain, all right? That's kind of where they're actually expecting the Florida landfall to be is a little bit further south towards the Tampa area than what the National Hurricane Center is saying. So they're saying, again, maybe half a foot if you're hugging the coast here in west central Florida, and maybe even as far inland as Orlando, you could get up to 5 inches of rain. It's a possibility according to the GFS, which again usually isn't the most reliable model for forecasting hurricanes here, but we're going to go through multiple models, so might as well talk about the GFS. And then it's showing a pretty high signature actually here on the east coast of South Carolina, where some spots could actually get close to a foot of rain, which would be very extreme stuff. So we'll watch out for that area there. And then at the North Carolina landfall scenario here, where it kind of stalls out over North Carolina, again, if that does happen, that would lead to catastrophic flash flooding here. This area you're seeing where it's all glitched, this entire area that's in blue that I'm circling, that is 15 or more inches of rain, which is obviously an incredibly dangerous and deadly amount. But luckily that mostly stays out to sea there. But they are saying that maybe if you're in the southern portion of the Outer Banks of North Carolina, you could get over a foot of rain, maybe even close to 14 or 15 inches, which would, again, be a very extreme situation. But that's what the GFS is saying here. And then if we do have any viewers in Nova Scotia, they're saying that maybe the southern tip of Nova Scotia could get somewhere from kind of 8 inches of rain, maybe even a little bit higher in localized areas. So we'll have to watch out for that. Now, you can kind of actually see here that we do have another system that the GFS is saying that could develop here and maybe make its way into the Gulf of Mexico, but it is way, way, way too far out to talk about that, so we're not really going to mention that too much in this stream. I just wanted to touch on that quickly. So let's look at the European here. So the European, all right, let's look at the, I guess we can't look at the reflectivity on the European on Radar Omega, but if we look at the precipitation, we can kind of get the idea of what the European thinks is going to happen with our system here. So we'll go to 210 hours out here. So we can see that the European being a little bit more aggressive with the rainfall totals in Florida. If you're hugging really anywhere the west coast of Florida, anywhere in the state really, I mean, you could be seeing 9 inches of rain, maybe, a little bit less in spots, obviously, maybe closer to just half a foot, but some spots, maybe even localized areas, get up to maybe almost a foot of rain along the west or central coast of Florida there, especially north of Tampa, north of Spring Hill, around the Homosassa Springs areas where we think is going to be the hot spot. Very similar, actually, to where Hurricane Ian made landfall, right? That's a similar location. Ian was a little bit further south, but anyway, it is then saying it's going to head up northeast, again, showing a very high signature in South Carolina, just like the GFS did, from Beaufort back over to Charleston. I mean, we can't rule out over a foot of rain for that entire area. It's possible, according to the European here. And again, it continues to push this further northeastward. Interestingly enough, saying that the potential Debby's second landfall may not even be in North Carolina at all. They're saying it may be in South Carolina, it looks like. But again, where it gets kind of messy in there, that glitchy signature, that would be 15 inches or more rain. But again, luckily it stays out to sea. Those kind of rain totals do anyway. But it continues to say maybe this will go further northeast, and then it actually doesn't really have it pushing into the Nova Scotia area, but maybe even getting close to portions of eastern New Jersey. We could see maybe half a foot of rain or more. Now, remember, this is a very, very early outlook. That's one model. You can't trust everything it says, but it's in the realm of possibilities. And again, in this stream, we're discussing all the possibilities, talking about the most likely ones, the least likely ones, and more. So, Mr. Storm, what do you think about the Europeans' run here?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think that it's doing a good job staying conservative, which I think that our models, I mean, not all the time, but a lot of the time models that stay conservative end up being one of the right ones. But I think I'm leaning more on the GFS, but the European model does have the storm stalling out just off the coast of Georgia and South Carolina, and that might be an issue for areas like on the coastline of South Carolina, because it's like right there. Like if you were on the immediate coast of South Carolina, this scenario would play out. You would get the outer bands from this, and it just feel like nonstop rain. And we really just don't know from the point where it's gonna be just off the coast of Georgia and stuff. We really don't know exactly what's gonna happen there. But the European model was struggling for a few days to get this up to a tropical storm, and at one point didn't even show this thing developing at all. And finally it's doing that, but it's also showing a potential hurricane. I mean, you could argue 987 millibars is a hurricane. I don't know, but it could be. But it does show a potential hurricane just off the coast of the Carolinas, so it's there. The potential is there. It's going to be close. And then it just kind of gets sucked up in our weather pattern and fizzles out over land and just kind of falls into our weather pattern. But I mean, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. And Davis, another model you should look at is the Icon.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. We can't look at the Canadian model here on Raider Omega, unfortunately, but we can't look at the Icon model either.
Oh, is there any way you can look at tropical tidbits, or would you have to?
Yeah, I can pull it up.
And also, just an update on our storms. We actually got an upgrade to a slight risk in New Jersey, and we have a meso discussion there, so it seems like that line is actually popping off.
Yeah, the meso discussion is for that severe thunderstorm watch that's now in effect.
Yeah, I got some storms heading towards my neck of the woods.
So let's take a look at the Icon here. I don't think I've looked at this one at all yet for the entirety of Debby's. So far.
Showing some pretty interesting runs.
So let's check this out here.
Doing a GFS kind of thing.
So it kind of slamming into the Big Bend to Florida once again, maybe as around a 1,000 millibar low there. So that'll be interesting again. That would be like kind of a weaker tropical storm strength. But it would really make some serious impacts on like southeast Georgia and the east coast of South Carolina. Has it even going down into like the 980s, 970s even. Wow. So that would, again, hug the east coast of South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia. That would be very significant in terms of a storm surge threat, a damaging wind threat, a destructive wind threat, a heavy rain threat, and everything. And it looks like it continues to have it riding all the way up the east coast, even into southeastern Virginia there. So let's see, can we look at the rainfall? Yes, we can. So it's saying that we would have, let's see, some pretty significant totals here. It looks like we could have some pretty significant totals off of the coasts of the Carolinas here. And again, obviously in eastern Florida as well. Look at this. We're seeing some of these bright colors here, maxing out the scale. Essentially 2 feet of rain or more is what some of these are predicting for very localized spots. That would be a very worst case scenario because, again, it has this thing slow moving and it also has it hugging the coast for a while, which, again, would just tack on all the rain, obviously. But I don't know about that scenario. That kind of seems very unlikely for me. But if it does end up being a slower moving system and it really hugs the coast so that it's able to take advantage of that nice, juicy atmosphere in the Atlantic but still cause problems for the southeast, that would obviously be awful. But, I mean, it's a possibility there according to the Icon model.
Yeah. And while you're at it, on tropical tidbits, you can take a look at the Canadian.
Oh, yeah, true. So let's bring that back up.
And then one more to look at. I mean, this might be a little bit of like some whack if you want to consider it a model, but you could look at the European AI model. It's done a pretty good job so far, believe it or not.
So yeah, the Canadian here has it slamming once again into the Florida closer to the Panhandle area, but it's still kind of in the Big Bend. There's around a 1,000 millibar low. The Canadian is kind of doing the opposite of what the Icon model did. It's keeping this very far inland. It's saying, hey, you don't get any of this Atlantic juicy, moisture, but that would still be pretty significant because we'd see heavy rainfall totals all along the southeast coast, but that would be the most significant thing, I think, if that would happen. And it also has this, again, not really affecting New England, but you may get some heavy rain if you're in, like, Cape Cod or something. So let's quickly take a look at the rainfall totals here. So yeah, the total accumulated rain, if this were to happen, it looks like would be, again, getting close to 2 feet for spots, which is obviously ridiculous. Now, again, just a reminder, if this were to happen, this would be pretty devastating. It would impact central portions of North Carolina. We'd see significant rain totals out of Charlotte. Now, another thing that would happen, though, is we probably wouldn't really see too much of a damaging wind threat. It would be a much less tropical of a system, I'd say, at this point. All right, but again, we'd still watch out for the heavy rain. Obviously, storm surge wouldn't be a big deal, though, if this were to happen. So, again, basically doing the opposite of what the Icon model said. And you know what? Yeah, let's just go ahead and take a look at the European AI. Is that ECAIFS, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, this is showing this making landfall once again in the Big Bend of Florida, close to the Panhandle, is around a 1,000 millibar low. There seems to be quite a bit of agreement there, which would be likely a tropical storm at that point. And then it has it making landfall again in the Carolinas, like most of them do, as around a 1,008 millibar low. It looked like this one actually was kind of the least aggressive in terms of precipitation out of a lot of our models here, so let's go and take another look at that. This is actually a little... Okay. So we would be seeing some spots. All right, the most extreme spot would be in this little sliver of Florida here in that red zone. That would be around 6 to 7 inches of rain, which, again, wouldn't be anything too significant, but I don't know if I'm buying that. Again, I think that we're probably going to see more significant rain totals than that, so I don't know. Obviously, this is a work-in-progress model, one of the AI models here, but still something interesting to look at.
For sure. Yeah, but you get the gist of all the models really kind of pulling together on this, but the rainfall amounts really remains as a question. It's between that's a significant amount of rainfall between alright, people really need to be aware that we're going to see this amount of rainfall, and people need to not be driving during this.
Yeah. So at this point,
2 feet of rain is catastrophic flooding. Believe me, catastrophic flooding.
Yeah. Yeah, we were watching Mr. Storm's first video last night. You want to talk about what you said in that about catastrophic flooding?
Well, we can save that for another video.
Okay. But yeah, jokes aside, yeah, for sure. We will get a new National Hurricane Center update here in about 20 minutes or so, so we'll keep an eye out for that here. We'll try to stay live until that happens. But while we're here...
Maybe a TD in the next update.
That's definitely possible. But while we're here, again, if anybody has literally any questions, now is the time to ask them here while we're just chilling.
Yeah, so we'll continue to talk about this, kind of waiting until we get that next update, and I think we'll just talk about our next update from the National Hurricane Center. Do you know if the cone advances? I don't think so, but...
I think it only happens... I think it'll only happen at the update after this one.
Yeah.
If I'm correct.
So I think it's the 8 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be. Well, I go after that new update comes in because I do want to see some of these storms as they go into my area, but I think they won't be here until later.
Yeah, so again, we do have some folks just now tuning in, it looks like. Again, if you're just not tuning in, we've been explaining for about the past half hour now the possibilities with potential Tropical Cyclone Debby. So if you have any questions about your location, what you might see, make sure to leave those down below. Again, we're expecting this to be kind of a southeast coast problem, all right? Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, those are the areas that we're really watching here for some significant rain totals. Again, obviously some very damaging winds and maybe even some storm surge at times, although storm surge doesn't look to be a huge threat with this system, honestly.
Yeah, so if you guys were wondering, the National Hurricane Center, what they're saying for rainfall is between 8 to 12 inches at max, which I think is pretty aggressive, but it might end up being the right move. But they're showing a little splotch of orange just north of the Tampa Bay area, right? Which is surprising because that's before the storm is going to honestly have a shot at becoming a hurricane. That's going to be when it's going to be a borderline tropical depression, tropical storm. So it kind of just shows you that we are expecting a ton of tropical moisture and just tropical downpours with this storm. Incredible rainfall rates coming out with this, but if you're in the yellow shade from the National Hurricane Center, anybody out there can expect up to 6 inches of rain. But really, once again, the orange shade, that's when you talk about 6 to 8, maybe 8 to 12. And you can see, a lot of those yellows kind of just going through northern Florida, moving with the track of the storm. Tallahassee, Jacksonville, definitely up to 6 inches of rain possible there. But even like Savannah, Charleston, Wilmington, all the way out there, I mean, you could even see rainfall totals up to or near 6 inches. And then off the coast, which lines up with their forecast, they have another two areas with 8 to 12 inches possible. So they really are showing us that there is a chance that some people out here can honestly see up to a foot of rain. So it's not out of the question. Like, this isn't a ton of baloney that we're talking about. This is the real deal.
Yeah, and Sam, Northport right now, the wind forecast is 35 to 45 mile per hour sustained winds. The storm surge forecast is none. Right now, the National Hurricane Center is saying no storm surge for Northport, again, mainly because we're not really expecting a landfall out here, but we may see some gusty winds blow some loose objects around. Again, the most significant thing would obviously be the rain totals. 4 to 8 inches of rain with locally higher amounts is insane. That could cause significant impacts. Moderate rainfall, flooding may prompt several evacuations and rescues, so make sure that they know if they're under evacuation order from their local officials to do all that. The tornado threat should be very low overall. Speaking of the tornado threat, we're thinking that tomorrow, actually, we could actually see maybe a brief tornado down on the southwest coast of Florida. The SPC has put out a 2% risk for this area. So this does include areas like Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Port Charlotte, North Fort Myers, Bonita Springs. Again, areas hugging the southwest coast of Florida, as well as the western Florida Keys here. So that would be something to watch out for. All in all, again, tomorrow we're going to have over 1 million people facing at least a 2% threat of a tornado. And again, that's why I was kind of saying tomorrow will be the day that we stop forecasting and we start covering. Today will probably be the last day of just forecasting. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking in depth a lot about what's going on. And we don't have a risk right now on Sunday, but I do think that since this is projected right now to make a Sunday night landfall, we could see some sort of tornado threat get added from the SPC for maybe this area. North Florida, the Big Bend area, back into southeast Georgia, that's a possibility. But again, we're still a little far out to talk about all that, so they haven't issued that yet. But again, tomorrow we do have a 2% risk from the National Hurricane Center.
Yeah. I really doubt that we're going to see a 5%, but like Davis said, it's a little bit too far to talk about that. I will say that the NAM 3K model did actually, the latest run of it does actually have the storm until the point where it comes off the coast of Florida. So we can actually maybe start talking about what models are saying for this possible tornado threat. But so far, it doesn't seem like it's going to be anything you guys really need to worry about too much. But those outer bands, I mean, there could be some embedded spin-ups there. And like we saw with Beryl, I mean, Beryl was it was crazy how many tornadoes we got from there. We got strong tornadoes. Like, they weren't just spin-ups. We had PDS tornadoes. So it's always a possibility to get strong tornadoes with these, tropical cyclones. But with this one, I really think that if we do get any tornadoes, it's going to be probably just a few spin-ups. But, that's what I'm seeing. But the NAM 3K model is very aggressive right now. Davis, I don't even know what to say from this, but this is showing a 981 millibar low hitting Florida.
But the NAM also said that Beryl was going to make like a 940 landfall in southeast Texas, so I don't trust the NAM in terms of the pressure.
Yeah, it's not. We can really kind of cross this out.
No, EF3 was max, Kevin. The next day, Beryl produced, the remnants of Beryl produced an EF3 in Indiana. But if you're just talking about the day of Beryl's landfall, yes, the highest was an EF2. Your sister's coworker died in Hurricane Ian. That's awful. But again, this is going to be nothing like Hurricane Ian. I probably shouldn't have even brought up that comparison earlier, but the reason I said that is all I was trying to say is that this is going to be a similar area that gets affected, right? It's actually going to be a little further to the north than Ian was. Ian was a little bit further to the south, but it reminds me of Ian as it's going to enter the west coast of Florida, make a landfall there, and then potentially make another landfall in the Carolinas, just like Ian did.
Yeah. So, please don't, take this as if we're saying it's going to be the same strength as Ian. Totally not. This is not going to be anywhere close to how strong Ian was. And I know you Floridians, you can take anything with tropical cyclones, so this is going to be a breeze. Just got to make sure that everybody's aware. Everyone's just saying weather prepared and weather aware. And that's how we can get through this without losing anybody.
Yeah, and again, we should get some new information here soon. We're going to get a new National Hurricane Center update in about 15 minutes here, it looks like. So we'll keep the stream going here for a little bit. So again, if anybody has any questions, leave them down below now. Yeah, you cannot trust the NAM for hurricanes.
Yeah. I'm going to mute because I'm going to get my charger, so I'll be right back.
Yeah, we know that you're not saying that, Sam. We're just saying that We're just explaining what we meant.
I'll be right back. I'm just getting my charger.
So we do have Storm Chasers Vince Welty and Corey Gherkin right now heading south to Chase Barrel. We do also have Storm Chaser, was it Ryan? No, it was Connor Croft that said he was going to be on, did I say Barrel again? I meant Debby. I'm so sorry. Got the heat advisory here, which is normal. Yeah, it is hot, but cool down is in store for portions of the Midwest. Really hasn't been too brutal this summer for the Midwest in terms of temperature. Severe weather, however, has obviously been a different story, especially for Iowa. I'd say out of all the severe weather this year, Iowa's probably been the hot spot. Iowa and Nebraska. Maybe Oklahoma. And you would think that that would mean that Kansas would be a hot spot, but Kansas, the only significant tornado I can name from Kansas this year, well, there's a few. There was the drill bit, the Westmoreland drill bit tornado, and then we had a couple, like the Alta Vista one was pretty significant. That was an EF2. We've had no Tour E's in Kansas this year, which is crazy.
I'm back.
Alright. Yeah, the severe weather has definitely loved Omaha here. I mean, we still have, like, tens of thousands of people in Nebraska without power after that derecho ripped through. Yeah, we still have 75,000 customers in Nebraska without power. By the way, some stronger storms in Alabama are causing some significant outages. Almost a quarter of 100,000 customers in Alabama right now without power. Most of them coming from kind of northeast Alabama, Clay County, Randolph County, Talladega County, St. Clair County, Calhoun County, Etowah County, and Marshall County. I don't know why it wasn't classified as a derecho, though, because it traveled 240 miles, producing widespread wind damage across the entire swath, so I'm calling it a derecho. If somebody can tell me a reason that's convincing why it wasn't a derecho, then I'll agree with it, but... But yeah, don't want to ignore our folks out here in the Delmarva area, New Jersey, PA today. We have a slight risk of severe thunderstorms. We also have a slight risk of severe weather tomorrow back into the Midwest. But again, if you're just not tuning in, we're doing another update stream here on potential tropical cyclone Debby. We're going to get a new National Hurricane Center outlook here, like, in 10 minutes. So if you want to stick around for that, we'll explain everything that you need to know in that next update there. But, anyway. It was a derecho. It was still around 60 miles an hour by Des Moines, but you stopped watching after. Yeah, I watched the entire thing. I tracked it out. It was barely a derecho, but it was. It's iffy. You could swing either way, but I'm calling it a derecho. And again, this isn't a rule for derechos, but usually it does end up happening. Usually there's one massive burst, one area that gets hit super hard. Obviously this time around that was Lincoln, Omaha, with 90 to 95 mile an hour wind gusts being recorded. Your borderline in the cone of uncertainty. Yeah, you would be right on the edge there. So, okay, we're not expecting anything too significant for that area. The worst part about this for a lot of people is going to be the flooding. Yeah, it did go through a ton of major cities. Lincoln, Omaha, you know. But anyway. Remember to go subscribe to Mr. Storm. His channel is in the description. He also designed this thumbnail.
Sir.
Yeah, very, what am I saying? Very moist conditions, obviously, out here in the southeast, so... I mean, it is going to feel... Go ahead.
I say that we can, safely say that I think it's time to switch to hurricane awareness mode.
Yeah. Yeah, like, it is gonna feel like absolute death in the southeast over the next few days. It already has been, but it's going to continue to feel like that. If we take a look at the GFS, we'll look at, let's just look at dew points. I mean, look at this. This is ridiculous. We have dew points almost at 80 degrees in portions of the southeast here. And actually, if we play this out, we'll probably see some spots reach 80 degrees. Yeah, look at this. Well, never mind. But it gets close, man. It's brutal. I spent a week in Central Florida last year, on, like, the first week of August, second week of August, whatever. Worst week of my entire life, because we were going to Disney World. We waited in 3-hour lines in 115-degree heat index, with no water or anything. I seriously almost had a heat stroke at one point. I was walking around, and I was like, I couldn't think straight. It was the worst vacation ever. Yeah, Sunday probably will have a very minor tornado risk again for, like, this general region, but right now the only SPC outlook tornado risk that we have is down here in Southwest Florida for tomorrow. But yeah, we were walking through, like, the Star Wars park, and it was all desert themed, and it really did feel like a desert, but it was moist, so it was even worse than the desert. Alright, we should get the new National Hurricane Center outlook any minute. What's up, Storm Chaser 575? Good to see you. Again, if you're just now joining us, we are doing another potential Tropical Cyclone Debby update. Maybe Tropical Storm Debby soon. And, okay, we have the new outlook from the National Hurricane Center.
Alright, here we go.
Nothing really has changed.
Yep.
Almost nothing at all. The rainfall map, wow. Okay, this has gotten more aggressive. We'll bring this up. It's gotten a little more aggressive. It's nothing crazy, but... Alright. So again, that orange shade there, that would be 8 to 12 inches of rainfall. Again, now we're seeing a larger splotch of west central Florida, potentially seeing that again around the Tampa area, the Tampa Bay area, which again would be significant significant flooding. Tack on that potential 1 to 3 foot storm surge in this area, and it is going to be pretty intense, especially if you're hugging the immediate coast. And again, we could see some of this splotch of 8 to 12 inches of rain potentially make it on the east coast of the Carolinas and Georgia as well. Let's see here.
The storm surge forecast went up.
Really?
2 to 4 for Charlotte Harbor, up towards Tampa, and areas north of Tampa as well.
All the way to the Shawnee River. Wow. So, yeah, that's, or the Suwannee River, sorry. That is significant. Now up to 4 feet of storm surge expected for that area. Wow. So that's a big update.
Yeah, that is a big update. Well, I think I have to go because my computer is not charging and it's about to die, so I'm going to head out. So thank you for coming to watch. Thank you, Davis, for having me on the stream. And yeah, that's all I got.
All right. See you later. So... it looks like now this is going to be a Sunday night landfall. Sunday night landfall in Cedar Key is the forecast for right now. Man, look at this. So, it's going to be sustained winds of 65 miles an hour, a county and a half inland. This could genuinely be a Category 1 hurricane at landfall. It's a possibility. We can't rule it out. Also, I don't know if this is new or not, but it looks like they did expand, they did move this a little bit further out. The cone is going a little further out, so again, it gets close to hurricane strength as well off the east coast of North Carolina there. Yeah, this is going to be insane, guys. So I think that now that we do have that new update, we're probably going to end off things here. So remember, guys, just be prepared. That's really all you can do. Well, we may have one more update stream tonight. One more. But after that, if we may not even do that, but if we do that, after that, tomorrow, again, we are now casting. We're covering the hurricane live, not forecasting it. One last thing to look at is these new tropical storm warnings here. Not really any new information, though, if we're being honest. Okay, never mind. So, originally this said situation is unfavorable for tornadoes. Now the situation is somewhat favorable for tornadoes. So, let's see here. The potential impacts are still limited, but they're not zero. So the occurrence of isolated tornadoes can hinder the execution of emergency plans during tropical events. A few places may experience tornado damage along with power and communication disruptions. Locations could realize roofs peeled off buildings, mobile homes pushed off foundations or overturned, large tree tops and branches snapped off, shallow-rooted trees knocked over, moving vehicles blown off roads, and small boats pulled from mooring. So we're going to have ourselves an interesting stream to do tomorrow, that's for sure. So that will be obviously pretty significant stuff. We don't have the new tropical storm watches yet. At least not loaded on Radar Omega. So again, I want to thank you all for tuning in to this live stream. Again, make sure to tune in tomorrow whenever we're actually covering Debby, especially if you are going to be impacted by it. So thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you